nothing's perfect. Until finally, after a year of this, one is perfect. And that's this. It looks a lot like Jurassic Park once you actually get there. That was my first impression anyway. And it's like, when you first step out of the car and you know you're there and it feels right, I mean, that happens in a lot of different businesses, like whether it's a product development, R&D, or whatever. When you hit the right formula or you come to the right, configuration of something, you just know that it's the right one. We all got that feeling the first minute we saw this place. But of course, way out of our price range. I mean, we're a lean startup. We have no money to work with, basically, at the very start. So we're thinking, we have to find something that's modestly priced. But that feeling was just overpowering. So the first thing that jumped through my head was not, we can't afford this. It was, how do we afford this? And I guess clowning around at the Gulch project told me and showed me through experience that people will join you and support you if you show them something worth supporting. So we basically employed a lot of the same methodology, and we got members in one at a time, slowly, that wanted to help us make this happen. So it's sort of like the crowdfunding model applied to real estate. The Rolls-Royce motto or whatever is like, take the best that exists and make it better, or if it doesn't exist, invent it. Unfortunately, we had to go with the latter route and just do it ourselves. And the reason for that is that I'm kind of one of those weird artistic types that likes, time to think and create and stuff like that. And when you have to hold down a normal job, it makes that process really tricky. If you're trying to write a book or play music with friends in a band or whatever, and then, oh, I got to go to work. No, sorry. So the whole point of this was to just provide something minimal that takes care of your needs, your shelter, your support system. The idea is you just pay it off and it's done. You don't have to worry about that. We've actually had a lot of very different people that we never would have thought come forward. Like, we tend to be fairly libertarian, conservatively minded type people. And we've had all kinds of socialist hippie types come in and say, whoa, this is awesome, because we share a lot of these common values. We all love to use Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and stuff, and that appeals across the whole board. We love open sourcing things, and one of the lessons from the failed Gulch project was that we have to do basically the opposite of what they did, in the sense of, instead of trying to keep everything covered up and trying to manage all the problems by yourself, we kind of flipped the script and we're like, okay, this is an open community project. This is not just customers and a provider. This is all of our projects. We're just kind of facilitating the birthing process. So it's kind of nice because now if something goes wrong, it's not all just our fault. It's a group effort. So if something starts looking weird for some reason, maybe there's a problem with the land or accounting, or the government passes a law, or anything that comes up, we can face it together as a group in an open fashion. And there's none of this, oh, you promised us something you're not delivering, et cetera, et cetera.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network on theseedsofliberty.com and theconsciousresistance.com. So Peaceful Anarchism is covered by the BIPCOT no government license. This allows reuse by anyone except for governments and the agents thereof. You can find out more information for this at bipcot.org. So today I'm pleased to have a returning guest, Gabriel Scheare, coming in from Valdivia, right? Valdivia, Chile. And he's going to talk to us about what he's up to in Chile with what's called the Cryptacademy, as well as his community project Fort Galt, and his recent addition to the family, which was an illegal home birth, which isn't that amazing? You know, you're trying to birth your baby safe and sound, and it's just you're breaking the law. You're a criminal. You're just a criminal, and you deserve to go to jail. So that, and perhaps touch on the idea of mandatory vaccinations and the philosophy behind that and why some people oppose it, as well as perhaps Jordan Peterson and the waves that he's making in the anarchist community and volunteers community. So, Gabe, thanks a lot for coming back on the show.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yes, it has, and I'm sure you've been busy. You don't seem like the idle type of guy.
No, I think last time I was in an apartment in Valdivia, like in the middle of town, and I think we had found the land for Fort Galt, but nothing much had started there yet, and we didn't have the funding together or anything like that. It was very early in the process. And so since then, I mean, a lot has happened. We've got a bunch of new members on board, and we've actually broken ground now. And I mean, things are rolling, and it's fun to be at that more active stage, right, where things are starting to materialize more. And then also, like, as you mentioned, Cryptacademy, that's another building that's going up on the same site where, we're hoping to put together this school to teach the locals more about, cryptocurrency and blockchain tech and all that fun stuff. And yeah, definitely staying busy. And also, as you mentioned, had a baby, so that's fun too.
Yeah, excellent. So maybe let's first get into Fort Galt. So maybe just explain to people what it's about and what are your goals with it. So are people living there now or just? No
one's living on site yet. No, we're generally just kind of clustering around Valdivia, renting apartments, and it's close enough that we can go out to the build site whenever we're needed and things like that. But no, we aren't actually living on site. Hopefully that'll happen later this year. But yeah, I mean, as you already know, I was kind of lured down here to Chile after seeing advertisements for kind of a similar community project that was specifically marketed towards libertarians. That was kind of close to Santiago. I think I started seeing those in 2012 or so. And throughout 2013, I was basically making plans to come down. And by 2014, the beginning of it, I finally made it and showed up and volunteered to help out. And within a couple months, it was pretty clear that it was all a scam. So had to basically stop and take stock of myself and say, well, now what?
Wait. So you're referring to Gulch, right?
Yeah, okay. Gulch, Chile. Yeah, okay. I'm sure anyone in libertarian land knows what that is and what happened with that. So they were essentially selling plots of land that were not legally inscribed. The subdivisions didn't exist. So they were selling something they didn't have to sell. And libertarians, of course, being the trusting, wide-eyed dreamers that we are, a lot of people bought into that. And I think $10 million went down the drain. So a lot of hard lessons were learned with that. And I guess I was fortunate in a way to have a front row seat because I got to learn a lot of the things that do work and obviously don't work in real estate. So a friend of mine that I met at the Exosphere Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, he called me up as all this was transpiring and offered to come down and pitch in and kind of take the idea back to the drawing board and do a smaller version of it. So we teamed up, 4 of us partners, and started exploring Chile. We found a great piece of land down here by Valdivia finally, and have just been chipping away at bringing this together. We started essentially with nothing. I mean, we just had crazy ideas and the loose idea that there were other dreamers like us out there that would want to take part in it. And so it was just a long process of throwing ideas out there and getting feedback, and then modifying the ideas and designs for buildings and things like that. It was, a long, gradual process. Of course, dealing with anything, legal down here is a whole process in itself. Every little step takes forever, and Chileans love their bureaucracy, so everything has to be stamped and signed a million times by everyone and his brother. And so it's just it's insanely educational. I do recommend that anyone who's interested in this kind of stuff, try it on a small scale, preferably, and, get your feet wet and just gather some experience because you learn a lot just by doing. And especially with anarchists and libertarians like us, a lot of the ideas that we like to toss around and debate have to do with how to live with each other, how to manage communities and organize ourselves and things like that. So, you know, before you try to change the world, as they say, I hate that phrase, but before you try to like rework the whole world around you, take a page from Jordan Peterson, right? Clean your room. Start on the small scale, you know, and you'll learn a lot from that. And just, you know, it doesn't have to be big. Just, you know, a small community of your friends and neighbors, you know, you'll have to deal with everything that the state deals with on a smaller scale. Everything about, you know, conflict resolution and how to, you know, build the roads and build a wall and all that fun stuff. So yeah, that's just what we've been doing. It's been this great big sandbox, and we've just been having a good time. But also, I mean, there are trials and tribulations that go along with it, and you just learn by doing. And holy crap, we've learned a lot.
So the people that you're attracting, are they all anarchist volunteers or just people who want to? Yeah,
and that was kind of a funny process too. Is like we started off with language on our website and in our marketing material and things like that that was very compatible, let's say, with libertarians, and we used a lot of like Randian type language and stuff like that, purposefully to attract that sort of person, because that's what we had in mind at first. That's why we came down. That's why we were attracted to Galt's Gulch. But one of the, you know, flip side, I mean, there were some great things we learned from Galt's Gulch, and there were some important but negative things too. And that was that the political charge, the ideology that goes with it, and everything, that has no place in real estate. I mean, it's almost a contamination, because it attracts people who think that they'll fit simply because they think a certain way about certain issues. And it usually has nothing to do with how trustworthy they are, how productive they are, how solid their characters are, anything like that. It's just, oh, I love freedoms, I don't like the state, so I'll fit in with you naturally, right? Not the case. Libertarianism is full of weirdos. Anyone who's been around it definitely knows that. Anyone who's been to Porkfest or Anarchapulco or whatever, you meet some great people, but you meet some total wingnuts too. And, you know, we figured out that we need a better model to kind of help people self-screen themselves, you know? So we gradually changed our language to focus more on entrepreneurship. It's not just a place for libertarians. In fact, we've stripped all of the libertarian, anarcho-Randian language out of our marketing material and everything. It's strictly geared towards productive, freelancers, entrepreneurs, people who have their own business or are self-sufficient, because that separates the men from the boys, so to speak, right? There's a lot of people who are like armchair philosophers that really haven't gone out there and learned the hard lessons yet. And just that life experience really does build your character and make you a more reliable, trustworthy person, generally speaking. And if you've left your home country, or at least are willing to leave your home country to start a business in a foreign land and things like you have to kind of be a libertarian anyway, even if you don't use that language. I mean, we encountered a lot of people through Exosphere, for instance, who were self-proclaimed socialists. And when we sat down with them, and of course we argued about, you know, who will build the roads and all that classic crap. But after a bit of conversation, we quickly learned that, you know what? They talk the talk of socialism, but in practice, they're just as anarchist as I am. This one guy, for instance, he was from Argentina, but he was working online doing coding for an American company and not paying taxes. So we're like, ha, gotcha, right? Since then, he's joined us, and he bought a room at Fort Galt, and he's one of the family. So So awesome. the political language can be kind of a hang-up. It can kind of get in the way, you know. It's the practice that you really got to focus on.
Yeah, it's so true that you know, people call themselves one thing, but then once you start talking to them, you talk about philosophy, morality, and economics, and they understand those basics, and you're like, all right, well, if you don't like the word anarchism, you don't have to use it, but essentially, yeah. That's what you are.
And I found like it goes the other way too. People who self-identify as libertarians or anarchists or whatever, like that label's not all that useful to me, honestly, because there's so many subjects that have to kind of be vetted or compared with each other to see if you actually match. Like, okay, you like drugs. Great. Does that make you a libertarian just because you don't like the state getting in the way of your weed? that's not enough, bro. Come on. So it's like, I just don't even care if you call yourself a libertarian now. That word has lost all its meaning to me, essentially. I mean, relatively speaking, you don't like state interference. That's great. Fine, whatever. But I mean, anarchism is more than just about statism or not, as far as I'm concerned. It's authoritarianism comes in other forms. There are illegitimate authority figures besides just the state. It's a mindset. It's a philosophy.
Yeah. That's. I mean, it's great that you're. You say there's certain people that are more armchair philosophers and espouse this stuff only behind the keyboard, and that's it, and that's not enough. But and that's why it's great what you do. You're actually going out and you're living it. You're transacting in it. You're just espousing it constantly in your daily life, and that's so cool. So go into a little bit of what Cryptacademy, and you said Exosphere. Is that related to Cryptacademy?
No. Well, we learned a lot of interesting lessons from Exosphere that I guess kind of transfer over to Cryptacademy. But Exosphere it's an entrepreneurship boot camp. And it was set up on the coast here of Viña del Mar, and this was back in 2014. And it was a 3-month-long boot camp program that I participated in as soon as I got to Chile, and that's where I met the people that turned into my business partners. That's Luke and Lourdes Crowley. They were participants in that program also. And then having kind of gone through all the course material and the little experiences along the way and things like that, we got to kind of realize that we worked well together for the most part, and we thought along the same lines about most things. And so after it was all said and done, I guess it just made sense that we could work in the real world together too. So, But I mean, they focus a lot there on building your character and your personal development, and it's not just like business school. Most people kind of get attracted to it for that reason, thinking that they'll just learn business skills. But I mean, there's a lot of foundational personal work that has to go on for the business skills to even matter, right? So that was fun, and they've since expanded. I went and visited them last August in Florianopolis, Brazil. They were set up doing a program there. They had kind of streamlined it and shortened it up, and it was a lot more fast-paced and I think better use of time, honestly. So they're still going strong, and Cryptacademy is essentially the major missing component that I thought Exosphere lacked, because we loved the program, everyone who was there participating in it, but they didn't have any physical infrastructure for themselves. They had to rent a venue, and everyone had to rent their own living quarters and things like that. And at the end of the program, a lot of us didn't want to go home. We just wanted to stay right where we were and keep working on these projects that we were developing and keep working with these new friends that we had just made and stuff. And so we thought, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to go home, if there was an infrastructure here, somewhere to live, where we didn't have to, clock out at the end of the season or whatever, and if there was a school building that we could keep using. And so essentially Fort Galt is developing to be the residential answer, and Cryptacademy is kind of the co-working space school wing of that. So we're trying to kind of finish the puzzle, and if Exosphere ever wants to come and use it someday in the future, we would be honored to have them as guests. So we'll see how that plays out. But also, I mean, just a flexible co-working space like that is insanely useful no matter where you are. And I mean, there are a couple small ones in town, but none of them are set up very well. So hopefully the rest of the community around Valdivia will find value in it too. And there's a homeschooling community in the area as well, and they don't have a proper facility to use either. They just kind of meet at each other's houses from time to time. And it's almost like how churches get built, People start just meeting in each other's houses, and then they're like, there's a lot of us now. We should probably, have a bigger place for this.
Right.
So we're kind of building the church for learning, So.
The church for learning, I like that. And I assume you also want to teach classes in cryptocurrency. Is that the goal as well?
Yeah, I mean, adoption is key with this crusade that we're on to spread the gospel of cryptocurrency. And in practice, I mean, Chileans have been very slow to, use it. It's this weird tech for nerds. It's, I mean, we've all dealt with the learning curve and trying to explain it to people for the first time and stuff, and they're kind of behind in the game. I mean, there are some exchanges here, which is nice. They've helped out a lot, because with Fort Galt, our members like to pay with cryptocurrency, and so it's nice that we actually have an exchange here based in Chile, so we can receive payments and convert to pesos and stuff. So that's been great, but that's about all Chile has going on crypto-wise. There needs to be more promotion and adoption, so we're hoping to help facilitate that here in this city and really focus on getting Valdivia caught up. You know, it can kind of be Chile's shining example of what a crypto town can look like. So this is one of the programs that we can offer on a regular basis, is just for community groups, businesses, individuals, just come on down late morning, and by the late afternoon, after one day, you'll know everything that we know, and you'll be comfortable using cryptos. You'll have wallets set up. You'll be comfortable using exchanges and trading and all that, you know, stuff that we take for granted because we've been using it for a while. But, you know, that learning curve at first is kind of scary for some, especially if they're not tech savvy, which a lot of people aren't. Like, that they only started using credit cards and debit cards and stuff within the last 10 years here. It's they're a little slower to catch on, but hopefully we can help them kind of leapfrog over a few steps.
Wow, so you guys are really like breaking new ground, like pioneers down there.
Yeah, and there's the International Coin Fest that's coming up in April too, and so we're kind of coordinating with them. That started in Vancouver, and they have parallel events happening all over the world, and so we're doing one down here to kind of coincide with that, just to kind of stir up the buzz and get some speakers down and put on an event to help people in town kind of start learning about what this is all about.
That's awesome. Great. So let's get into I'm excited to get into your home birth, because I that's something that I'm passionate about as well. Yeah. Like just, you know, homeschooling, home birth, you know, that kind of, although we did a home water birth.
Nice.
So we took it to the next level. No. So I don't
know, that just sounds like more work to me.
Oh, it's so beautiful. But yeah, first, I'll get into it. But let me I'll let you talk about, you know, what the climate's like in Chile regarding home birth, and how was your experience, you and Tanisha?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, it is technically illegal. I mean, once you've kind of been an anarchist for a while, that doesn't bother you so much because everything's freaking illegal, it seems. So
I know, right?
It usually just comes down to the more practical question of, am I actually going to get arrested for this?
Right.
So in this case, the answer seems to be a pretty clear no, as long as you're not retarded about it. There are doulas and midwives, and there is sort of an underground network of people that do the home births and things like that. So there is a support system in place if you put in a few extra minutes to look for it.
So wait. So I assume since it's technically illegal, then there's no like technical license for a midwife, right? It's just like,
I'm not really sure.
Somebody knows somebody. Like, it's just like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what all the certification is and how it compares to the U.S.
Okay.
There are certified midwives that are acknowledged by the community as being reputable, and there is sort of a vetting infrastructure in place for that, but not for doulas. So yeah, we went with a good, reputable midwife that speaks English. She's originally from England, actually, and has been here for quite a while. And then we also got a local doula in just to help out. And I mean, it really wasn't complicated. I mean, obviously from the woman's perspective, it's difficult. But in terms of complication, it all went very smoothly for the most part, which is great. I mean, that's really why we have the help. It is in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Like you want somebody with experience to be able to spot and notice that something's going wrong, so that you can jump on it, get to the hospital if you have to. Fortunately, there weren't any problems like that, and it was a very long labor, though. Holy smokes. I think it was like 39 hours or something like that from the first contractions. But
so was she able to go to sleep in that time, or you?
I think she got some sleep, but not a lot, obviously, because you're anxious and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, I mean, we just put like a mattress on the floor here close to the bathroom, and out she came.
That's great. Yeah, so I have two kids, and my first one was it was a water birth. We had the same midwife, same doula for both, and woman was like she's in her 60s, and she birthed like over 3,000 kids, something like that. Like a lot. Yeah, like she's been busy, and she's been doing it for like 30 years. And her C-section rate is like, I don't know, 1%, which is amazing. You know, most hospitals are like 1/3.
Oh, yeah.
1/3 C-section.
Chile's terrible for that.
Yeah, and so and she even birthed her own grandchildren, which is pretty cool. Her daughter lived in California. She's in New York, and she only wanted her mother to come and help her birth her baby, which is pretty amazing. So it's pretty cool. And so we were in a hospital, a water birth facility in the hospital. So it was like a separate birthing room, not like, you know, like factory style, you know, one woman next to the other. No, it was like separate room. Lights were dimmed, and it was very calming and quiet, and it was very beautiful. But yeah, we just didn't like being in the hospital. You know, the fact that they take your baby away and you don't know what they're doing, and I don't like that. So yeah, the second one was definitely at home, and water birth at home is beautiful. You know, the water did so much to relax her contractions. So much so that, like, before she actually got into the birthing tub, she was in the bathtub, and her contractions actually stopped for a while. She was so relaxed, and then and then she got scared. Oh no, contractions stopped, and she got out of the water, and they started up again.
Oh wow!
But yeah, she really enjoyed it, and yeah, no problem. Just like you, no complications. Really, just came out quite smoothly. It's just a beautiful experience, you know, and. I actually, I think I told you I used to do stand-up comedy. Did I ever tell you that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a few jokes about the water birth, and yeah, of course, with my kids and my wife. But like, the one joke about the home birth is like, it was very beautiful. I took a lot of pictures nobody will ever see, and that's basically
exactly
right.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Oh yeah, this is stuff they don't show you in all those midwife shows or ER shows or whatever. Like the actual head popping out and that content little look on their face while they're suspended half in and half out. And
yeah. Yeah, like, and the water birth is pretty amazing in that, you know, so many people think, you know, what if the baby drowns, you know, but the baby goes from a liquid environment
Where
into
do you think she's been this whole time?
I know, exactly. Liquid environment to liquid environment, and it's just amazing, you know. It just comes out, it's so smooth. But yeah, I highly every time I talk to a woman, and I try to, and they tell me they're gonna have a hospital birth, you know, I tell them about my experience and my wife's experience, and try to get them to appreciate that, because it can be a really beautiful thing. So many women are driven by fear, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Fear that so many people, the obstetrician, the media puts into the, you know, about home birth is dangerous and things like that.
Well, and just for the sake of drama, like any TV show that involves a birth, whatever, something always goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like, just for the sake of keeping it interesting and exciting and stuff, like they don't portray it accurately. But I mean, we actually went and checked out the hospital, just, you know, so we were familiar with it in case something did go wrong and whatever. And I mean, it was not a friendly, hospitable looking place.
Yeah.
So it was pretty clear that, yeah, this is not the way to go. But
yeah,
I mean, I guess it's nice that it's there in case you do need it. But
yeah, of course, yeah, in case. But yeah, let me actually rewind a little bit, because I just remembered my first child. Although we intended on having it in the hospital, she started getting contractions, and they were coming so swiftly that she probably could have had the baby at home. But we planned on having it in the hospital, so the midwife was like, "Go to the hospital now." And it was a half-hour drive to the hospital, and she had to hold in the baby. She had to not push, which is so. It didn't feel right for her. She's like, she wanted to push. She had to. Like, the doula was in the car helping her to breathe so that she would not push. Oh, it hurt. And then once we got there, she had to get on this table so that they can take her vitals. I think they took blood, and they took they assessed the fetus, like, temperature and heart rate and her heart rate, and that was an extra half hour of her not being able to push. Oh my God, it was torture. And then finally, when she got in the tub, like right when she got in the tub, like her water broke and baby came out in another half hour. The next half hour. So,
jeez, man.
Yeah, we could have definitely had that first at home, and we're like, why didn't we just have it at home? So we learned our lesson. Yeah.
Well, as far as like things that can go wrong,
that's not so bad, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's not that it went wrong. It's just that it was delaying what probably would have happened much easier. It
Right.
unnecessarily complicated the situation, you know.
Yep.
And you know, in addition to having it at home for safety reasons, this maybe we can segue into our next topic, is the idea that once you're at the hospital, it's very easy for them to give their first vaccines, right? And so I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that they took your baby away like almost immediately, which is like the most important time for the mother and child to bond, and they just take the baby away and do all these tests, and that's just horrible. That, you know, these mother and child should be together from then on. That's it. And so
not complicated, right?
Yeah. And so we didn't like that either. So another reason why we had the second baby at home. So yeah, why don't you tell me about your philosophy about vaccines and how that developed? Like what influenced you in the way you look at vaccines today?
Yeah, at first I guess I was like most people, and it's just something normal that you grow up with, and you don't think about it too much and whatever. But then as you kind of get sucked down the libertarian rabbit hole of having to actually think about your principles and try to make them consistent and universally applicable and all that, then you kind of have to reevaluate everything and see how it all fits together and where the kinks in the armor are. And I kind of ended up just lumping it in with everything like circumcision or like neutering animals and all that kind of stuff. It's just cutting people or whatever without their consent, and that's kind of assault. So it's not cool. It's like if you want to do it to yourself, that's great. Or if you give permission to someone else to do it for you, that's awesome, whatever. But you don't just like sneak up on your friend and like castrate him because you think you should be. It's like, you know what?
It's for the good of the herd.
Yeah.
It's think about everyone else, right?
Well, I have a lot of debates with like anti-natalists and stuff too, who think that there are too many people in the world and it's wrong to have children and stuff. And like, not even they will sneak into your bedroom and castrate you. So it's
yeah, they're considerate with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I started formulating my opinion about it before I had kids. And one of the biggest books that I read was it's by this guy, Dr. Robert Mendelsohn. You've heard of him?
No.
He wrote a book called How to Raise Your Child in Spite of Your Doctor. And it was a wonderful book. It's written in 1984, and he's like an obstetrician, you know, standard medical guy, and he was practicing for like decades, and then all of a sudden he made a complete 180, kind of just like John Taylor Gatto, right, working in the system, and then made a complete 180. And similar to John Taylor Gatto, he became ostracized, and he was an outlier, and he was kicked out of all these groups and associations he was in. And he started writing books denouncing his own profession, denouncing obstetrics, denouncing vaccines, denouncing even gynecologists, like mainstream gynecologists. And and he wrote I have a couple of his books. So one is that. The other one is called Medical Malpractice, but it's kind of like written like it's medical malpractice. Pretty cool. And then he's got another one, Confessions of a Medical Heretic. Awesome books. I highly recommend.
Wow.
I think you would enjoy them.
Yeah, for sure. And like that's definitely true throughout the whole field. I mean, it is a business. It's an industry, and you know, obviously, I'm a capitalist, and I'm all down with industry and profit and stuff, but in business, in industry, you have to be very conscious of where the incentives are and where they motivate people to go and what you're motivating them to do. And you have to align and set up your incentives accordingly, you know, based on what you want the outcome to be. And in medicine, here in Chile especially, I mean, it's basically the same as the US too, but the incentives are stacked against the customer in so many ways. Like, the C-section right here is ridiculous because they want to get, it's like fast food, you know, they want to get you in and get you out, and they want to minimize their liability and everything. So it's like they look for any excuse to just carve you open and yank that sucker out. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you have to kind of reevaluate everything and not just take things for granted, you know?
Yeah. So basically that book, it basically communicated to me that that most parents are empowered. Most parents have an intimate knowledge of their child much better than the pediatrician does. And so many parents too often hand that power over to the pediatrician and say, you know more, you know my child better than me. This is your field. So, whatever vaccines you want to give him is good. Whatever medication you want to give him is good, and which is a complete mistake. It's very sad. And he basically says that most childhood illnesses are self-limiting, self-correcting, and are innocuous, right? Like simple things like, head pain or abdominal pain or constipation or diarrhea, many times have simple solutions. Not all the time are they like, a tumor or like, strangulated intestines. There's like the 0.001% of cases. For the most part, people panic too much and too soon. Like for a fever, they rush their child to the hospital for a fever, and most of the time, the hospital's like, what are you doing here? Just go back home. It's the child is fine. You just wasted a hospital visit. And it's so sad that parents do that. So that's one of the things that I learned from that. And so in the beginning, and I read all the books on vaccines and everything, and I kind of focused on at that time, like, what the ingredients were, and how they, interact with the body, and not all of them are tested all at the same time. And now they're becoming more and more, so many more vaccines are given as compared to when we were kids, right? And it's just amazing the proliferation of vaccines that kids, below the age of 6. It's like, I think like today, below the age of 6, they get like 60 shots in total, something like that. Yeah. And many of those happen multiple times in one doctor visit, which is amazing, completely overloading the child's immature immune system. And so, that's what I focused on at that time. And then later on, as I learned about anarchism, voluntarism, my perspective changed to more of the idea of medical consent. And like, we own ourselves and our body and what gets put into it. And as parents, our children are basically extensions of us, and we should have the final say in what goes in their body, right? And also the fact of what you said, in that they can't consent to it, right? So in the same way as like, circumcision or ear piercings for girls, I mean technically, I guess if you take out the piercing, the ear part of the ear grows back, but still it's like, it's pain, unnecessary pain, even the earring.
Well, I would put ear piercings in the same category.
Yeah, I would also. Yeah, definitely, I would definitely. But yeah,
tattoos, same thing.
Tattoo. Oh my god, people tattoo their babies. Wow, that's sick. But anyway,
it would be.
Yeah.
But hey, there are cultures out there that we're not used to, and they have all kinds of weird practices that we think are nuts, but are perfectly normal to them, like female circumcision, as they call it, right? But,
right.
I mean, but that's the thing with principles, is it makes a lot of this a lot simpler. Is you don't have to study the living shit out of every single tiny possible scenario, because the principle binds them all together, and it's a common thread. And I'm also like definitely not one of those people that will jump to conclusions about people's intent. I mean, a lot of people, they'll go, oh, there's this negative outcome here, therefore it must be somebody trying to do something wrong to others, somebody trying to hurt others, somebody trying to profit at others' expense or prey on others, or whatever, some malevolent intent behind the action. But holy crap, like I was saying before, just doing this real estate project, like every time you have to deal with a professional or something, like we had this accountant, for instance, and we were paying him for a year, and at the end of that year, when it came time to do the taxes, we found out that he was doing jack shit the whole time. And we had to hire a whole other accountant to go back and clean up his mistakes and stuff. And it's like, he wasn't out to hurt us. Like, it wasn't personal. He was just really shit at his job, and we weren't paying him as much as some of his other clients. So his incentives were pushing him to care more about someone else. It's just... It's just incompetence. It's lack of care, lack of training, possibly in a certain thing. There's a million reasons that a negative outcome can happen. It's not a conspiracy to harm you. I mean, that's possible, but one should never jump to that conclusion.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I assign that very same mentality to government school teachers, in the sense that a lot of people, say they indoctrinate, and they do, but perhaps they're not malicious. They're not willfully trying to, inculcate state dogma into the kids and make them drones and all that stuff. They don't want to do that.
Right.
They think they're educating, they think they're helping kids, but they're not.
Right. And I mean, we can speculate as to a bunch of underlying psychological motivators too, right? Like, one of my little pet conspiracy theories is about like why the game is set up the way it is and why people are so quick to defer their expertise or their knowledge to some authority figure or something like how many parents study parenting before becoming a parent, or after, or during? Like almost none, right? My parents sure didn't. Their parents sure didn't. Like maybe they glanced at an article in a magazine that was in the waiting room, but none of them said, okay, I'm having a kid in 9 months. I'm going to become an expert on this. Because their parents didn't. And they didn't because their parents didn't. And it's so much easier just to defer your expertise or your knowledge to somebody in a white coat, right? Than it is to say, wow, my parents fucked up. And I suffered because of it. Or there was collateral damage because of that choice. And like it makes you face a lot of uncomfortable things and have uncomfortable conversations with them and all that stuff. It's so much easier just to say, oh, well, there's a doctor for this, or there's a teacher for this, or there's a cop over there for this,
Yeah, I would definitely, and what you said about incentives is also another great point, because, people accuse those people that are against vaccines, you tinfoil hat conspiracy type people, right? But the idea is, if the person can be held liable for damaging the patient, for injuring the patient, I would be fine with that. I would be completely fine. But they're not. Medical doctors can vaccinate and become 100% immune from damaging their patients, and the pharmaceutical companies are 100% immune from damage. I don't know how it is in Chile, but I know here there's vaccine courts that they have to go to, and it's very difficult to get compensation, and it's very arduous. And isn't that an amazing thing? Like, what business can harm their customers and then become immune from litigation? What kind of business model is that? That's not a business model. That's called state mutation.
Well, yeah, just pretend that there was a competitor that was set up differently, that was set up with liability insurance, and they had to be checked for all these things, and they did have to pay out, and would you not go to that competitor? Of course you would.
Yeah, when his license is on the line, his reputation is on the line, and everything's on the line. All of a sudden they treat you differently, right? Just like the guy, the accountant, the symptoms are different when, according to how much you're paying him, right? And so, yeah, that's a major thing. And so it kind of irritates me. I think like, I don't like vaccines, but that's not to say I'm against science or medicine. It's just to say that it sucks that I can't trust this thing because it's been so muddled, and it's blurry. When the state gets involved, you don't know what's good anymore. You can't tell if it's good because it's immune to repercussion. Like if the free market developed vaccines, I'm sure it would be very different, right? If the free market developed antibiotics, it would be very different. If the free market developed anything free of state,
right? And if I had some brilliant, fantastic product for you that was so great, why would I have to force it on you?
Yeah.
When I be able to charge a whole bunch of money for it and have you voluntarily pay for it?
Yeah. Or protect myself, legally from the repercussions of me harming you. Why why would I need that if I thought that it was safe, right? Because obviously if they do need that, it's not safe.
I mean, there's a lot of anarcho-capitalist theorists and things like that love to speculate on what the world would look like if it was a free market, if there was no state. And that takes you down the rabbit hole of insurance providers competing for your business and things like that. And you have to wonder, like, okay, what would that look like if, one insurance provider might be really protective, very conservative, And, they would put cameras everywhere, to minimize the risk to you. They would put up security systems to try to protect you, be kind of a nanny state insurance provider. But the premiums would probably be a lot lower because they would be taking good care of their customers and protecting them from harm and minimizing the risk. And so more freedom would be a luxury almost. You would probably have to pay higher premiums to get insurance coverage if you want them to stay out of your house and stay out of your business and not keep tabs on you and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. But yeah, all right. So let's go on maybe to Jordan Peterson. And what you've learned from him and how he's affected you in the way you think.
Well, it's kind of like I mentioned before about cleaning your room, right? This is one of his taglines that he's been throwing out there a lot and bringing things back to. I remember one of the first full interviews I watched of him on Joe Rogan, I think it was, and Joe asked him, okay, at the end of the interview, what's one thing that you would tell people, just to leave them with one thought? And that's what it was, is clean your room. Before you run out there and try to change the world, get your own house in order. Build yourself, work on your own personal development. And because we have all these, kids growing up with these crazy ideas and some of them are probably perfectly fine. But there's so many unintended consequences to everything, especially when it's on a big scale. And now when we have cryptocurrency technology and communications tech and internet and everything, where we can actually influence and affect a lot of people with pretty minimal inputs, the potential for problems and unintended consequences are so much bigger. Like back in the 40s, you couldn't, screw up a $20 million deal when you're still in high school. But you can now. We have ICOs. We have people creating their own little coins to fund their startups and things like that have tens of millions of dollars riding on them. And we have high school kids doing this without any real world experience and things like that. So it's kind of a powder keg in a lot of ways. But I mean, this whole process too has kind of taken me through something else that he talks about, and that is the process of becoming a fully developed individual, and how that involves going through sort of a tribalist phase, he explains it as, first you have to learn how to be part of a community, how to be part of a group, how to find your tribe and be a fellow tribesman. And then once you've done that, then the next step is to learn how to kind of break away from that and become a strong individual. And so I remember when I first kind of got into the libertarian community, for lack of a better term, I met and befriended the leader of the Canadian Libertarian Party at the time, and started getting kind of politically involved and started meeting all the people in the Vancouver scene. And then I started hosting events and all that kind of stuff. Sorry about that. I just dropped the phone. But it was sort of a necessary phase. But as you develop your philosophy, as you kind of hone these ideas and iron out the kinks, and you spot inconsistencies and logical fallacies, and you work through them, and it's great to have that tribe. Having other libertarians to bat ideas around with and things like that is super useful when it's kind of new to you and you're working through it. But once you start getting to the point where it's really comfortable for you, and you have a consistent framework in place that you're happy with, and there aren't any big outstanding questions left, you'll probably look around and notice that you're kind of alone for the most part. You'll not alone, but you'll have a small number of higher quality friends as opposed to a large number of lower quality friends.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And that, yeah. And so that's sort of an indicator that you're shifting more towards the point where you're ready to become an individual and kind of step out of the tribe and stand alone. That doesn't have to mean you're alone by yourself necessarily. Hopefully you've got a couple of other friends at that point that are on the same page. But there's so many little topics that are all wrapped into one's worldview and one's perspectives and philosophy that the odds of having friends that agree about every single one of them are extremely low.
Yeah, right.
Like even my closest friends today, we agree on most of the big things, but I don't think I know anyone that I can say I agree 100% on every little topic.
Nope. definitely not.
It's just, yeah. So I really like the way he explains that process, and that kind of sums up my feeling about the movement, as it were. I mean, the Libertarian Party, for instance, is very big tent, as they say. They include minarchists, they include conservative party members that just want to smoke weed, and and libertarianism, and especially anarchism and anarcho-capitalism, they attract people that just kind of want a safe space to practice their particular vice, where they won't be judged. It's like, you can't judge me. I'm an anarchist. What are you, some kind of statist authority figure? Who are you trying to impose your values on me?
Right,
so that's fine. That's great. That's part of the process. But once you define for yourself what your values really are and what you stand for, then you start cutting yourself away from the rest of the people that don't fit that framework, and that's okay. And that played into what Fort Galt is. I mean, it's not for everyone. It's not for every libertarian. I like to think of it as a higher class, a higher caliber, a more discriminating option. If you just want a place to party and whatever, that's fine. There's a lot of options for that. There's great festivals and things that take place and whatever. No one's going to worry about these things. But because Fort Galt is an actual community where people live and have to deal with each other all the time in close proximity, we have to start thinking about these other things, and we have to have standards for one another. Essentially, we have to know that our neighbors are trustworthy and that they're not going to stab us in the back, they're not going to do us any kind of harm, that they can be trusted with our children, all that kind of stuff. Like, what kind of neighbors do you really want to have? Mm-hmm. And so looking forwards, I think that's what community development is going to be, whether it's on a seastead or a little micronation or just a small town kind of thing like we're doing here. People are going to be gathering according to their shared values, not according to accidents of birth or colors of their skin or whatever. I mean, there might be some of that too, but I mean, what really matters to you when you're looking for a home? Mm. That's the first thing that comes to my mind is, who are my neighbors?
Well, I need people with brown eyes. Only brown eyes people can be around me.
Fair enough. I'm sure that town will exist someday.
So before I respond to that, I remember what I said about the vaccines, which is what you. Just wanted to reiterate what you said, which was a great point. When you understand your principles, and for me, that would be like self-ownership. I own my body and that of my child, and so I don't need really to. To know the specific side effects of every single ingredient, or no studies determining this is linked to autism or whatever other illness. No, I don't need to, because that degenerates into a whole other conversation of like, no, that study is flawed and blah, blah. It's just like facts, my facts against your facts. And I don't want to get into that conversation. Go ahead.
Right. And like, even still, just the way that you phrase that kind of highlights a minor discrepancy about the way that we probably see it too. It's like, I would not say that I own my child's body. I would say that she owns it, and I'm her service provider. I'm her.
Okay, good point. Good point. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of, I definitely agree with that.
And like, part of my job is to protect her, and
right.
I have to do that to the best of my ability.
Yes, I'll rephrase it, and I like the way you said it better. Definitely sounds a lot better. Yeah, that's what I meant. But yes, I just wanted to say that. Excellent point, and so that's why I when I talk about vaccines now, I talk about freedom of medical choice. Basically,
right.
That's what it comes down to for me. But yeah, with Jordan Peterson, I've been listening to him a lot more recently. I've seen he's becoming pretty popular in the anarchist and volunteer circles, and I like that he's he does focus a lot on men, on talking to young men, probably because they are shunned a lot in society, which is very unfortunate. And I think he does a great job. And the whole, tend to your, make your room or tend to your house, kind of reminds me of a Confucius quote that I like to say a lot, which is, it says, if you want to improve the country, first improve your town. If you want to improve your town, first improve your village. You want to improve your village, first improve your house. And if you want to improve your house, first improve yourself.
Absolutely. And of course,
Peterson is a Christian, and there's a version of that in the Bible. You know, it tells you that before you try to take the speck out of your friend's eye, you should take the plank out of yours.
Right. Yeah. It all comes back to the individual, and you know, I guess it's a very. Go ahead.
No, sorry, but like that concept is offensive to the general public these days, right? Because it is fundamentally at odds with socialism.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that you should take care of yourself first.
Right.
You know, pay yourself first. Take care of you first. That's offensive because you're supposed to work for the greater good of everybody, you know, all that kind of crap, and you're supposed to sacrifice for them.
Right.
So, I mean, that's why I like Peterson, really. I mean, he's making these underlying concepts that people don't necessarily focus on much, but are underneath everything else. Like he makes it okay to have standards and be discriminating. And he clearly explains like why that's a good thing. You have to be discriminatory. Discrimination is good. You know, and
yeah, go ahead.
But like Ayn Rand said these same things, but she was more inflammatory. You know, she was more like a shit disturber. She wanted to have like shock value and like overturn the apple cart. Whereas Peterson's approach is an academic, and he's got this you know, Kermit the Frog voice that just sells everything. It's so gentle and like self-evident, and he's also open emotionally in things, and even in an interview, if he hasn't thought about a question or whatever, he'll stop and think about it. He won't just come up with bullshit answers to pass the time. He's you know, he'll say, I've never thought about that. Let's hang on a minute. I'm not really sure. You know, he'll admit when he doesn't know something, or so just that was kind of a breath of fresh air when it kind of came on the scene, I think, because it's not what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, and I mean, I've never heard of him describe himself as a libertarian or even an anarchist, but definitely a lot of the things that he espouses do tend to have that flavor. He's really done a lot of great work, and you know, I think did it all start like when he was like made famous by that whole thing with what is it? He spoke out against the pronoun law thing, right, in Canada.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful. I mean, he's been at this a long ass time. He's been a professor saying these things forever, but no one, like, it took camera phones essentially. It took smartphones, and it took his opponent trying to smear him and trying to make him look bad to make him famous.
Yeah.
Whoever shot that video must be kicking their own ass every single day right now. If it weren't for them shooting that footage, no one would have ever heard of him.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? I think he makes like $50,000 on Patreon a month, something like that.
Oh,
like
easy.
People
Easy.
love him. Like, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, what did he get kicked out of the college or the university that he was in, or like what?
I don't know what the technicalities are on that. He got reprimanded. He got a couple of warning letters because, you know, that's how human resources works. They have to build a case first. They can't just fire you on the spot because they don't like what you said. They have to give you warnings. They have to document your responses and build up a case. So I think he was just kind of made uncomfortable, and it was made clear that his opinions weren't super welcome, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think he was ever like officially fired.
Right. Yeah, you know, the idea of trying to reform others and trying to tell others how they should live their lives is really the essence of statism, you know. And, and so many people around me who think that they are doing good in the world by advocating for more gun laws, more business regulations, more taxes, and they think that they're doing a good job, or by voting for this person who's gonna, you know, steal more from the rich, you know, and they think that they feel morally righteous for doing that, and it's just amazing how, you know, as sometimes I like to ask them, what behavior would you like the state to forcibly prevent you from doing, or to force you to do? You know, because that's essentially what you're doing to other people, right? When you advocate for any state action.
And like I was saying earlier, once you start developing an intentional community, your brain starts wiring itself a little differently. Like when you're living in the US or Canada or just a speck amongst a larger state that dominates you, you just kind of conform, and you're told that you can try to affect change in the greater community of millions and millions of people by voting a certain way or putting out YouTube videos or doing some tiny little thing to try to shift the sands of public opinion a certain direction. And we all know that's pointless. I mean, we try it once or twice, or these people who call themselves activists might try it 100,000 times. I don't friggin' know. But personally, after I tried a few times, I was like, wow, this is super pointless. My time is worth more than this. And so you start focusing on your own house. And when you start gathering others to your community and building an intentional little place where things make sense, the rest of the world takes on a very different look, I guess, aesthetic. It starts to look like enemy territory, you know? Like when I'm with my friends, when I'm at Fort Galt or whatever, it feels like home. It feels like safe place. It feels like friendly territory. But when I go out to the big city and I'm wandering around and there's cops everywhere and people that want to vote to take away my freedoms, and that does not feel like home. That feels like I'm venturing behind enemy lines into a hostile land.
Yeah, and it's to me it embodies the difference between saying that you're, anti-state, anti-war, anti-politician, man-made law, which we all are, and not just saying that, but also saying that you're, pro-family and pro-love and pro-cooperation and pro-business and pro-entrepreneurship, which is a beautiful thing. And I think a lot of anarchists and volunteers would do well to not just focus on what they're against, but actually state what they are for and what they advocate. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're living it,
And pro legitimate authority too.
Right.
Because as anarchists, we're quick to point out all the illegitimate authority, but we forget that some of it is perfectly legitimate too, as long as it's voluntary.
Right. Sure.
And when you start packaging all that in kind of a framework and you put a name on it, it looks an awful lot like feudalism almost. It's like, okay, we're for private property. Property's good. We're all in favor of people voluntarily joining other people and working for them and living in a privately owned community. Isn't that a castle? Isn't the property owner a lord? Wasn't this done? Wasn't this normal once upon a time?
Right. Yeah. It's a good distinction. Also, the difference between a leader and a ruler, and in terms of the ruler, rules by force and by mandate and by dictate, and tells people what to do and punishes them if they disobey, whereas a ruler a leader leads by example, right? In the front, right? Leads ahead and shows the way what should be done, and you can either follow or not follow, right? And that's it. And that's all. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's important to know who owns what. Like if the land is all owned by one dude, then of course he rules it. If he's letting you camp on his land, you don't automatically own his land now. Right. I mean, come on, you're a guest in his house, right? So one might sloppily say that he rules you. Well, no, he just rules his own property, and you want to hang out there for a while. It's like, okay, whatever. And you can work out some kind of a private deal with him, like rent a piece of his land from him as long as you agree to abide by his rules or something like that. And as long as he owns the property, I see no problem with it. It's this illegitimate authority of people just voting themselves into positions of power over others and things like that. That's where we have a problem, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, great conversation. I don't want to take you too much. I know you have a little baby over there, got to tend to.
She is ridiculously quiet at the moment. I don't know how Tanisha's pulling that off.
But maybe it's the sound of our talking about volunteerism and anarchism is lulling her to sleep. Excellent.
lullaby of reason.
Excellent. So before we go, just reiterate the ways that people can reach you if they want to follow what you're doing.
If you want to send me an email, I am gabriel@fortgalt.com. Of course, the website is fortgalt.com. There's also cryptacademy.com. I'm on Facebook, Skype, LinkedIn, whatever. Like, I'm out there. I'm not hard to find.
Awesome. So I know I asked you this last time, but it's been a few years. Maybe it's changed. What is your favorite quote of all time these days?
I guess be the change you want to see in the world is still great. I kind of mentioned before how I just absolutely hate the phrase change the world.
Yeah.
Because of all of the assumptions that are baked into it.
Right.
But that's kind of the antidote to that. It's not that you are trying to change the world. Being the change means that you are cleaning your own room rather than trying to clean everyone else's.
Yeah. That's the first thing I thought of when you mentioned clean your room. It's a variation of be the change, you know. And that's definitely very, very admirable because, you know, that's why I tell people what I do. It's all I do is I just talk about, you know, philosophy, morality, economics, and entrepreneurship and business, and, you know, trying to educate people. That's how I try to. That's what I do to try to improve the world. That's it. You know, I'm not telling. Go ahead.
And it's a full-time job. I mean, if you're actually being the change that you want to see, you have no time to run around trying to change everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm still learning, and I love, you know, when I interview fascinating people and I learn new things, and, you know, so I'm constantly learning. And, you know, I think in order to be a better person, you have to be open to you know, improvement and saying, you know what, I didn't think about that. Maybe I was wrong. You know. Show me a different path, and I think that's one of the things that distinguishes voluntarists and anarchists in general is that most of them are very, very humble in that in order to have reached this point, we had to have reconsidered our pre-existing notions about what we understood about business and the economy and politics and government, right, in order to reach this assumption, right? So many people do not reconsider those things that they were brought up to believe. And I think that takes an amazing amount of willpower and humility. So,
great note to wrap it up on.
Yes, awesome conversation, Gabe. I really appreciate it. So if anybody wants to follow him, please do. He's doing some amazing stuff down there in Chile. Help him out. So thank you very much. So this is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network on theseedsofliberty.com and theconsciousresistance.com. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more of it, please feel free to donate and help me interview other fascinating people. You can do so through Patreon. That's patreon.com/peacefulanarchism to help me out. $1 a show is all I ask. If you feel so inclined to donate more, please feel free. It will only assist me in spreading the message of freedom and voluntarism that much farther and that much more efficiently. You can also donate to my Bitcoin. My Bitcoin address is in the description to my videos as well as on my website, peacefulanarchism.com. And while you're on my site, there's a donate button to donate through PayPal. If you prefer to donate through PayPal, you can do so with that. But Patreon is a little bit easier for content creators, as you can set up a recurring donation if you so desire. Also, while you're on my website, peacefulanarchism.com, please feel free to sign up, enter your email address, sign up for my newsletter, and you'll receive updates every time I post something, a video or an interview. I do not send out any spam. Or you can also follow me on Facebook under facebook.com/peacefulanarchism or facebook.com/Danilo Cuellar 3, I believe, Danilo Cuellar 3. So either one of those methods, if you are able to donate, I would be most appreciative. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a magnificent day.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.